Welcome to another installment of Revelation Tells Us. The war has already been decided. We all know that Jesus already won the war. And what we're going through is part of God's plan. I mean, we got to sit back and watch as, the devil does all of his stuff and, shows the universe, the angels in heaven, and especially shows to us what his ultimate plans and goals really are, so that we learn never to trust the devil or anybody like Satan ever again. And we can all live happily ever after in heaven. Anyway, what we're going to take a look at in Revelation 18 today is Revelation's going to explain who's behind all of this stuff. And this is going to concentrate on the monetary values of the world. This is the monetary value, the money system that Satan introduced who knows how long ago, that he uses to control and manipulate people. One of the things it doesn't cover that we just have to mention, and we all know to be careful and watch out for, is people in wolves and sheep clothing, preachers that claim to be Christians that are just coming out with a false gospel. We got the prosperity preachers, and then we got the marshmallow and fluffy preachers that you become a Christian and everything in life becomes rainbows and unicorns. And then we've got all kinds of other ones that we really got to watch out for. Particularly, we got to watch out for the people that are constantly claiming that they're like prophets from God, that they try to predict the future, and they're wrong 100% of the time, all the time. But they make more money than, actually they don't make more money than a lot of the people on the left, but they use the same mind control and manipulation that the Democrats use, and they've all borrowed that from the communists, the socialists, and the fascists. Anyway, we know where this stuff is coming from, and we're going to take a look at Revelation 18 and see what we can learn from it. So after all this, I saw another angel come down from heaven with great authority, and the earth grew bright with splendor. In other words, what does this mean? That means when this is going to take place, after this other stuff takes place, this angel is going to come down and shed some new light on the world. And that's telling us, basically it's telling us, forget all that stuff we've been taught all our lives about, these people properly interpreted Revelation and all the prophecies before they happened, because that's not the way it works. And it's telling us to, after all this, means we got to take a look back and review the previous chapter, which was Revelation 17. And we went through this, and just to briefly give an explanation of it, it's all about the woman sitting on the scarlet beast. And, she's the mother of all prostitutes and obscenities in the world. And she was drunk with the blood of God's holy people. And as it goes on, it explains that even the people that follow this whore, this woman sitting on the beast, they don't like her. They want to get rid of her. So, anyway, we reviewed that before. If you want to go back and watch that video, just tune into my channel. Okay, and then we saw this one word down here, this word city, and we looked it up. And just to review, we looked at the word city, we looked at the Greek definition for the word city, which actually means warfare. Okay, that helps to explain a lot. But then we looked at another meaning, polis, which was polo. We could not have understood this. There's no way anybody could have understood this before Biden opened the borders in 2021, and we're seeing the results of that in 2023. When we look at the word polis, we found out that it's a Spanish word that means chicken, and in slang it means a person that pays another person to smuggle them across the southern border. How did God know that? That's the perfect example of we can never understand prophecy until it's been fulfilled. That's the way it works, and it's completely consistent. So let's take a look at Revelation 18 with an open mind and under the light and splendor that this angel is giving us, based on what we've seen happening over the past, let's just say from 2020 to 2023. So this angel, as shedding this light, gave a mighty shout, Babylon is falling, that great city is fallen. She has become a home for demons. She is a hideout for every foul spirit, a hideout of every foul vulture and every foul and dreadful animal. Are we seeing Babylon falling now? So we don't know if this is a long, drawn-out occurrence or if it's a one-day thing or whatnot. But we're seeing signs of Babylon falling. We're gonna cover those in some comments at the end of this video. For the nations have fallen because of the wine of her passionate immortality. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her. Because of her desires for extravagant luxury, the merchants of the world have grown rich. Now, this is exactly what the devil has been doing. The devil introduced the monetary system, money system, gold, silver, all this other stuff. Now they used to print money, on printing presses. Now they just create it electronically today. But it's the devil uses money to control people, and we've seen that. We see it every day in the news now. Then I heard another voice calling from heaven, "Come away from her, my people. Do not take part in her sins, or you will be punished with her." Okay, good warning. We got to pay attention to these words. For her sins are piled as high as heaven, and God remembers her evil deeds. Now, remember when we went through at the end of Revelation 16, and the good were harvested by Jesus and the bad were harvested. That's the end of the judgment period, used to harvest as a symbol. And the evil were thrown in the wine press, and the blood was as high as a horse's, whatever. Anyway, flowed on and on and on and on and on. So these evil deeds and evil sins are piled high, and God remembers them. And basically, we can compare this story to Genesis 6, where Genesis 6, where God, finally decides he has to destroy the world. Do to her as she has done to others. Double her penalty for all her evil deeds. She brewed a cup of terror for others, so brew twice as much from her. Okay, do to her. So God remembers her evil deeds, do to her. Are they telling God to do to her? Or we have to consider another fact. Does this mean us to do to her? No. We're not going to go beyond it. If God tells us we're following God's orders, we're going to follow God's orders. But the people that follow this woman on a scarlet beast don't follow God. They don't follow his commandments. They don't even follow any of the laws. They want to get rid of the Constitution. They'll do anything that their heart desires. So is this saying that the people that are following this woman are going to do to her worse than she did to them? And what did she do? Well, Epstein Island is one example. There's videotapes that are basically being used to frame a whole lot of people, both men and women. I mean, we don't even want to dwell on what happened on that island, but we know the crooked politicians, they get other politicians involved, and they keep really good records and, protect themselves and everything else at all costs. There's no honor among thieves. They know they're going to be swindled. She glorified herself and lived in luxury. So watch it now. So match it now with torment and sorrow. She boasted in her heart, I am queen on my throne, and I am helpless. I am no helpless widow, and I have no reason to mourn. In other words, it's grown so rich, you got nothing to worry about. But when we look at Congress, spent $22 trillion since Biden took office. What happened to that money? No one knows what happened to that money. Well, we can speculate and say, certain members of Congress stole it. They stole trillions. But that still isn't enough. We're seeing it today. They're giving hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, and we know that money is being funneled back. The greed has no limit. Therefore, these plagues will overtake her in a single day, death and mourning and famine. She will be completely consumed by fire, for the Lord who judges her is mighty. Now we come back and we've got this word judges, and this is, what phase of judgment is it? The end of the phase of, either you're saved by Jesus, or your book is written in the book of death, those who are lost, and there's no coming back, or by the fire, consumed by the fire. Is that after Jesus returns with us and the saints after that 1,000-year period, and Satan gathers all the army around him from all the dead people that followed him, and they finally get thrown in the lake of fire? We don't know. There's a couple possibilities for that. And the kings of the world who committed adultery with her and enjoyed her great luxury will mourn for her as they see the smoke rising from her charred remains. Okay, basically, you read the part about being tossed in a lake of fire. The first ones that get thrown in are Satan and the false prophets, the three frogs, and all this other stuff. There's kind of a series that it covers in there, so go back and review it. They will stand at a distance, terrified by her great torment. They will cry out, how terrible for you, O Babylon, you great city. In a single moment, God's judgment came onto you. Now, here we go again. When we look at the context of this, the way the sentence structure, why does it have to go, "O Babylon, you great city"? Is this reminding us that, this is actually identifying who? We go back and see how the cartel out of Mexico is identified, has a strong connection to this woman on the beast. Is it talking about that? Well, we still got to, see how these things unfold in the future. The merchants of the world will weep and mourn for her, for there is no one left to buy her goods. Well, basically, we got to take a look at this section, and we got to remember, the war has already been decided. The war has already been won. I think I chose the word decided because that's what we're doing. Is we're taking a look at Revelation based on the light we have today, and we're seeing what steps are being taken. We're seeing how God is actually in control of everything, every step of the process, because He recorded all these prophecies before. He knew exactly what was happening. She bought great quantities of gold, silver, jewels, and pearls, fine linen, purple silk, and scarlet cloth, things made of fragrant thyme, wood, ivory, goods, and objects made of expensive wood and bronze, iron, and marble. In other words, it pretty much controls everything. Surprise. Of course, we got to kind of look at what was the Greek meaning of some of these words? Maybe it's even coming back and pointing to lithium. Who knows? She also bought cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, olive oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, sheep, horses, and chariots. Basically, it's controlling. This is all the stuff we've seen going up. It to us today, this is explaining inflation and bodies. That is human slaves. Now, I did another video on this human slaves, and we compared it to Jeremiah chapter 34. Jeremiah chapter 34 explains how Jerusalem was ready to fall. So they reached an agreement with God, free all the slaves. So they free all the slaves. Babylon army goes away. And then after they saw the Babylon army go away, they said, hey, we're safe now. So they re-enslaved the people. And God said, enough is enough. That's the last straw. Human slavery was the reason Jerusalem fell. Is human slavery going to be the reason the world is going to end for the final and last time? We didn't have a problem. I grew up in the 1960s. Slavery was not a problem until Biden opened that border. Now, human trafficking, human slavery, prostitution, and drugs have been a major problem in the United States. The Democrats created this situation. And then in the last video on Revelation 17, I played a little bit of a segment from liberal hive mind to where Democrats are trying to make this human slavery, it's just part of the deal. It's part of opening the border. It's part of living the new American dream is human slavery. Okay, the fancy things you love so much are gone, they cried. All the luxuries and splendor are gone forever, never to be yours again. And that includes human slavery. The merchants who became wealthy by selling her these things will stand at a distance, terrified by her great torment. They will weep and cry out, how terrible for the great city. She has clothed in the finest purple and scarlet linens, decked with all the gold and precious stones and pearls. In a single moment, all the wealth of the city is gone, and all the captains of the merchant ships and their passengers and sailors and crews will stand at a distance. Okay, there's a lot of stuff to cover here. Basically, trying to show off. That scarlet. It's everything is focused on calling attention to yourself. We see groups out there today trying to call attention to ourselves. I don't even want to get into it. But making promises with all this wealth and fortune and all this other stuff. And then it gets into something rather strange. It introduces and kind of focuses in on captains of merchant ships and their passengers and sailors and crews will stand at a distance. Now, what does that relate to? Okay, we're in verse 17. Remember that. We're in verse 17. What we do is we see this interpretation. Where is that? Okay, then the angel said to me, the waters where the prostitute is ruling represent masses of people of every nation and language. Okay, the waters. So when we look at this, it's verse 17 here is basically tying it back into the previous chapter by using captains, merchant ships, and their passengers and sailors and crews. So it's people that are working and people that are just standing by observing, and the captains, people that are leading on the waters. Okay, that's pretty easy to understand. Once we start comparing these chapters and see how these stories build one upon another, we can begin to understand and see all of these symbols explained within the Bible. They will cry out as they watch the smoke ascend, and they will say, "Where is there any city as great as this?" And they will weep and throw dust on their heads and show their grief, and they will cry out, how terrible for this great city." The ship owners became wealthy by transporting their great wealth in the seas. In a single moment, it is all gone. Back to what this whole series is about. This war has already been decided. These are the steps it's going to take. Right now, I would say that John is being shown a vision to where, this whore, this woman sitting on the scarlet beast and the beast and everything was thrown into the lake of fire. And this is the reaction of the people that followed her. I mean, they're going crazy. They're having a meltdown. Pun intended. Rejoice over her fate, O heaven, and people of God, and apostles and prophets. For at last God has judged her for her sins. Okay, here we see the word judgment again, and then we have to look at, okay, what phase of the judgment? There's different phases in every court proceeding. Number one, you have to be accused, arrested, you go through the whole process, the booking, you schedule a trial, you go through the trial, there's a verdict, and when you're guilty, it goes on to the sentencing, and then after the sentencing, then the penalty is carried out. And I would pretty much say we're John is seeing a review of when the sentence is being carried out. Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a huge millstone. He threw it into the ocean and shouted, "Just like this, the great city Babylon will be thrown down with violence and will never be found again." Now we got to kind of look at another study method, and this is, okay, we find a key word like millstone, and it's not used anywhere, but we know, those of us who have read the Bible know that the millstone relates to a couple of other stories in the Bible. And I took a look at some of these, and I copied them, pasted them in there. So let's review a couple other stories with the word millstone. Luke 17, one day Jesus said to his disciples, "There will always be temptations to sin, but what sorrow awaits the person who does the tempting." Okay, and if we notice, what sorrow awaits the world because it tempts people to sin. Temptations are inevitable, but what sorrow awaits the person who does the tempting. But if you cause one of these little ones who trust in me to fall into sin, it would be better for a millstone to be thrown into the sea with a huge millstone. So here we go. Cause one of the little ones who trust in me to fall into sin. Who does the tempting? Who does the tempting? This is the main theme in this story that Jesus told and was recorded by Luke, Matthew, and Mark. One day Jesus said to his disciples, "There will always be temptations and sin, but what sorrow awaits the person who does the tempting? It would be better to be thrown into the sea with a millstone hung around your neck than to cause one of these little ones to fall into sin." So watch yourself. If another believer sins, rebuke that person. Then if there is repentance, forgive. Even if that person wrongs you 7 times a day and each time turns again and asks forgiveness, you must forgive. Okay, this is basically summing up the job we have as God's army. We're supposed to be examples for these people. All right? And we are being good examples. Basically, when we look at the fixed election, the left has been trying to tempt us into a response. They're trying to force us into a response. They're doing so many things to piss everybody off. They're trying to invoke a civil war. And everybody is just sitting there going, no, we're not going to fall into that temptation. But what are we going to do? We're going to stick with God's law. We're going to stick with the Constitution. We're going to stick with the laws the way they're written. We're going to use the Constitution and the laws to overthrow these people that are conducting the real insurrection of the United States, the real takeover of the United States. Eventually, good is going to triumph. And we know, well, if it doesn't, we already know Jesus won. So that's where we are right now. But you can read Luke 17, you can read Matthew 18, you can read Mark chapter 9, and get a little bit better feel for that story. But let's go down and get back to Revelation 18. And it's a good idea to click on this because then I know where I left off. So we've seen this connection with the people, the sailors, the merchant ships, the passengers, and the people being the sea, and we've seen the connection with the millstone explained by Jesus in the Gospels. The sound of harps, singers, flutes, and trumpets will never be heard in you again. No craftsmen and no trades will ever be found in you again. The sound of the bell will never be heard in you again. Okay, how is this closing? Let's finish it. The light of a lamp will never shine on you again. The happy voices of brides and grooms will never be heard in you again. For your merchants were the greatest in the world, and you deceived the nations with your sorceries. In your streets flowed the blood of the prophets and of God's holy people, and the blood of people slaughtered all over the world. Okay, the summary in here, pretty easy to see. Number one, the outcome of this war has already been decided. We know that. But in the very last line, we see what Satan's ultimate goal is. He wants to destroy every single one of God's followers. The blood of the prophets and of God's holy people, and the blood of people slaughtered all over the world. Basically, that sums it up. So, without any further ado, I'm going to get into a couple of comments that I saw that I think we got to cover that pretty much explain and sum up and cover a little bit of this new light in Revelation 18. Well, today we took a look at Revelation 18. And that's a chapter that lists all the material things demons will be using to control people in the last days. And actually, the things demons have been using to control humans since who knows when. Consists of all the gold, silver, gems, food materials, clothing materials, and the last item, of course, was human slaves. Now, no one in the right mind would have ever thought we would see slavery being an issue in 2023, but it's been an issue since 2021, and what brought that issue to light was, of course, Biden, first of all, closed down oil production in the U.S. and opened the southern border the day he took office. So today, human trafficking and, of course, drugs and the guns being smuggled in have become major issues of the day. Well, for over 2.5 years, we've seen everything thrown at us to spike a response. We have the open, blatant, fixed election. People were not afraid of being filmed stuffing ballot boxes. They weren't afraid of the cameras and in the election offices where they did the counting and running through 100 ballots through the counting machines and picking them up and running them through again and again and again. They had no fear of being filmed. Why? Because they were promised protection from someone. And that relates to a whole bunch of things. Okay, shutting down the election at midnight. That's another thing. I mean, the whole world saw what the results were. And what they do, they shut it down. And the next days, the major news networks announced they found millions of extra votes for Biden that changed the election results in the middle of the night. Now, finding those votes in the middle of the night kind of brings to mind a spiritual significance for most of us. Now, we believe that a judge would step in, or the Supreme Court, or even God would step in to fix that situation. Everyone on the right believed the problem had to be resolved within the law and the structure of the Constitution. Not one law could be broken. We all felt we had to set the example, showing how the framework of our law and Constitution could not be compromised in any way, shape, or form. This brings us right back to the verses we read about the millstone and the lesson Jesus taught, with that using the millstone as an illustration. Okay, the majority of America showed the world we believed in keeping the law and defending the Constitution at any cost. We could never set the example of setting aside a single part of the Constitution and set the precedence. It was okay for future leaders to pick and choose what laws to follow and when it was okay to ignore the law. That was not an option. The cheating in the election was so open and blatant, no one missed it. It didn't take long to see cheating in the election served a spiritual purpose. It became evident who was involved and who was following orders to overthrow the government with a fixed election. They all followed the same script, saying it was the most secure election in U.S. history, and if you didn't agree, you were racist. That exposed every layer of demons from Hollywood all the way across the nation to Washington, D.C. They were out in the open, believing they were the majority, and it was their time to rule the world. But first, they had to get rid of the U.S. and the U.S. Constitution. Now, those who have been paying attention to the Democratic Party have seen how they work in a specific system. They always accuse someone else of a crime before committing it themselves. We've been seeing it happen for over 30 years, so when we see top Democrats accuse Trump of committing an insurrection and interfering with a peaceful transfer of power, we know exactly what's coming. Well, on January 6, 2021, President Trump addressed a large group of followers outside of Congress before the electoral votes were counted. A half dozen states had hours of video and thousands of sworn testimonies about the cheating that occurred election day and the days following and weeks following the election. Changes to the vote tally that didn't make sense. You've all seen that video evidence. A few of those states wanted more time to decide what to do about the election results. That prompted Democrats to move quickly. Now, some people estimated the crowd in front of Congress at over 500,000 people. Now, people in that crowd were all constitutional supporters, including the Second Amendment. Suffice to say, that group represented the well-armed segment of America. The Minutemen of today, every communist nation fears. The segment of America that keeps our nation safe and secure from any outside invasion. If they wanted to forcefully overthrow Congress on that day, no one would have stopped them. It would have been over within minutes. But nothing like that happened. Still, Democrats called that rally an insurrection. Worse than Pearl Harbor and 9/11 combined. Some made the statement before anything happened. We could tell they were reading from a script prepared before January 6th. Some of the stories that followed were beyond imagination and didn't agree with the videotapes. Arrests were made, and more than 2.5 years later, people are still sitting in prison for trespassing, while nothing has ever been done about the rioters that burned and looted before the election in 2020. Now, what are they doing? They're trying to use fear as a weapon to show that they are in control and they can do whatever they want. They don't have to follow the law. They don't have to follow the Constitution that guarantees a quick and fair trial. There is no trial. They're just stuck those people in prison and that's it. And they can do that to anyone they wish because now they are in power. But 2023 is showing us how some of those plans are unraveling. Well, we've read in Revelation 17 how the people that follow that woman will hate that whore. I visited Milwaukee before the election and talked to some of the people. I avoid politics and business, but some people asked me who I was voting for. Of course, I answered Trump, and they were relieved. Chatted a little bit. Now, a few days before the election, I made another trip to Milwaukee, and what did I see? I saw Biden signs up and down the streets. There were 2 Biden signs in every yard. Now, I talked to the people I talked to before, and I asked them, I said, well, you said you were voting for Trump. What are you doing with a Biden sign in your yard? They told me the gangs put the signs up there. Now, in 2023, we're seeing communist loyalty take its usual turn. We know there's not 2 communist countries that trust one another, and history has shown how communists join forces, conquer a country, then the strongest communist groups eliminates the weaker groups. We call that genocide. Well, we're beginning to see that unfolding in America in 2023. Now, somehow Democrats reached agreements with gangs in blue cities. There's nothing new. We've seen that happen in elections in the 1930s where organized crime used local gangs to fix elections. In 2020, we saw gangs across the U.S. organized in protests that turned into riots, looting, and burning businesses. Chicago just showed us why They're getting rid of businesses by introducing their plan to install state-owned businesses in Chicago and all over Illinois to replace the businesses that organized crime ran out of town. Well, in exchange for their support, Democrats supported criminals by defunding police. They introduced a revolving door policy with no bail, basically giving criminals free rein in the blue cities. But today we see how far that loyalty lasted, how good the word of a Democrat is. Well, the open border brought in millions of gang members from all over the world, typically a lot of them from Central Latin America and Mexico. While those gang members congregated in blue cities, they set up shop and they started to take over the neighborhoods controlled by the gangs the Democrats made all kinds of promises to. Well, wars broke out, and the Democrats were nowhere around to lend any support to the gang members they made agreements with. Shootings and murder shot up in blue cities since the border opened. People are no longer safe in those blue cities. Businesses shut down and moved out. It didn't take long for those gang members to understand that Democrats lied to them and used them. Well, when we see gang members posting videos saying they feel safer under Trump, we know something's happening. We are seeing prophecy fulfilled. Those who followed the whore, the woman sitting on that scarlet beast, have now seen their kingdom is based on lies and deceit. And they fell victim to those lies. Even the criminals fell victim to those lies. The tide is turning, like God said. It's all part of His plan. Well, that's it. We took a look. We saw that in Revelation chapter 17. It was reinforced again in chapter 18. And who knows what we're going to see as time marches on, and even more events add even more details to what we see. And don't forget, the best way to see prophecy fulfilled is to wait, watch it be fulfilled, go back, check the Bible, and go, you know what, we just saw that happen. That's the way it works. So keep on praying, keep your contact with the Holy Spirit, and somehow we got to keep on working to save those on the fence. And like Jesus said, we even got to reach out to the wokest of the woke. The people, especially the people that are influencing and trying to pull as many people as they can over to Satan's side. It's our job to try to save them too. So don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to share. And everyone have a blessed day.